Here's how to make a lentil-shaped pendant. I like to call it the spaceship, and you'll see why. To make this pendant, you're going to need some objects that are rounded or domed. A light bulb works really well. Also, a set of teaspoons or tablespoons. The tablespoon's the one I prefer. You could use a plastic ping pong ball. You could use an egg even if it were maybe covered with plastic wrap. Then you're going to need either a circle template or what works really well are drink caps. I prefer the ones that are about 1 inch to 1.25 inches in diameter. For each side, 5 cards thick on the Teflon, you'll roll out some clay. And at this point, if you want to texture it, you should do so. And then you'll press the drink cap directly onto the clay. Then you can remove the extra, and then there's going to be a little bit of extra material called flashing, which can be sanded away after the dome has been dried. But you're going to need to remove this from the Teflon to place it onto the domed object. So you can use the X-Acto knife to just very, very gently start to lift from the Teflon, or you can act like the circle is like a sticker, and you can peel the Teflon away from the clay, and then that makes it easier to transport the clay to the domed surface. In this step, this is where you very carefully place the disc onto a lightly oiled surface, domed surface, be it a light bulb or here a tablespoon scoop. So then you very, very gently press the ends down so that they all conform to the shape. This is where you set it aside and you let it dry. You're going to do this one at a time. So once this one dries, then you can roll out another circle, use the same cap, and then place it on the same surface that you did before, and then just let them both dry. In the next step, you're going to be leveling out the lower edge of both of the domes. So they need to be completely dry in order to do this. And in the next slides, it'll be more obvious what I'm doing. But I'm using either emery paper or I'm using a sanding sponge. And I'm just placing my fingers on this dome, and the edge side is down, and then I'm just swiping it in a circular motion all around the emery paper or the sanding sponge. And what this is going to do is just completely level and create a rim. And you're going to do this on both domes. So this will make more sense in the next slides.
And when you put the two halves together, anything that sticks out, like this part right here, is going to form a gap. We want to minimize that.
This is the result. So you should see sort of an even surface. So even if your discs aren't perfectly round, that's okay, because you're going to end up making them mostly round no matter what. And no matter how they fit together, you can make it work. As long as both the top and the bottom discs, domes, are the same diameter when they started, you should be fine. All that dust that was created from sanding those edges, make sure you add that to your slip jar. You're going to want the slip to be a little bit more pasty so that it's going to act like a good glue to put this pendant together. Once they're both finished, this is what the halves look like. So as you can see, there's a little bit of, it's not the most even, but there is a nice surface area so that they both can connect. And when you put them both together, they should match up pretty exactly. This is where you load up the brush with some paste, and you just use it to scrape a bunch of paste along the whole entire rim of one of the halves, the lower half. And then you're going to place the top dry half directly on it, like a cookie. And then you can press them gently together, and you'll see some of the paste coming out the sides. You can use your fingertip to just brush that away and it will kind of blend in as it dries. Before adding a bail or a part to hang this pendant, you can go around and hold this at an angle, and you're smoothing out all of the edges. So you're trying to form as much of a pointed edge as you can, although it may not necessarily be pointed. Either way, you're just trying to smooth with the sanding sponges anything that was a little bit rough around the outside edges. You can also consider whether or not you want to add a top piece to this, if you want to add a smaller domed piece that has some sort of embellishment, a texture, or maybe even carve into it. If you wanted to carve into the top piece or the back piece as it is, you can. Either way, this has to be done usually before you would add the bail. This just shows the templates. You can prepare the template by putting a piece of clear tape over top, whichever sizes that you'd like to make. And I usually will cut out whichever one that I am wanting. And the next slide will show how I do that. As you can see, I just place it right over the wet clay, and then I cut it out. I remove the extra clay from where it is, and then you'll see how to form it. This one was just a slice. This is the same pendant, a front side and a back side. And I'm just showing how I did that on the following slides. As soon as you've cut the bail, wrap it around something that is rounded, a small straw or a paintbrush handle, anything that you can manage to wrap it around. And then you're going to place it onto whichever pendant you're choosing to do. I used this one for the cube pendant, and this is not attached. This bail is just resting there, and I placed the entire pendant into a cap just to prop it up. You can do the same, and just let it dry in that position so that when it is dry, you can attach it and it conforms exactly to the shape of your pendant. So this is one option, but I do have a second option in the following slides. Bail is a bit easier. It just starts with a ball of clay that you flatten. You just kind of press it until it looks like the far right. Use a straw, any size, usually just a normal size straw, and then you punch the hole in the center, and you can remove that little bit of clay from the end of the straw. But then before it dries, you're going to slice a little area so that it's going to fit to whichever pendant you choose to make. Here I'm showing how you would slice away a little section so that it would fit to the shape of your pendant. So on the left shows how you would fit it to a box where you would cut it at 90-degree angles. In the lentil pendant, you would choose which part of your pendant you are going to be cutting this for, because it is, since it's clay, not all of those edges are going to conform to the exact way you cut it. So you have to choose which part you're cutting it for. So right here, I'm showing on the far right the section that I cut away. And you may have to file a little bit after it's been dried so that it forms exactly. So it's going to be way easier and have a more solid connection. In this step, you would just load some paste on the ends of where you cut on that little Cheerio bail, and then press it to the pendant, the section that you had made it for. And as you can see, I've kind of loaded around some filling in of the paste just so that the gaps are filled. You may have to do several layers of this. You let them dry, and then you're going to go around and with a sanding sponge, or even if you need to do it with an emery first, you can smooth all of that out. So once it's smoothed, I'm going to be attaching a top piece. This was something I made with the molds, and it was just an embellishment that I took from a magnet that I thought was really cool. It was circular. So I had sort of domed it a little bit, and now I'm just brushing some paste on because I'm going to be sticking it onto the top. You want to put your bail in place first so that you know that that top piece isn't going to interrupt the bail at all. This is where I'm pressing that top piece onto the pendant. It doesn't fit exactly flush, and I made the decision to leave it that way. So on the next slide, you'll see what it ends up looking like. This is what the top piece ends up looking like on the lentil, and it doesn't conform exactly, but the part's right underneath my fingertips. That's the part that's connected. It's got a lot of paste there, so I know that it's going to have a solid connection. It's going to have a little part that's just got space underneath it, but I'm just going to leave it. I think it kind of looks cool. And on the right, you can see that is the pre-finished pendant ready to be fired. I actually did one extra step, and I took a sanding sponge to the textured areas, and that brought out the design. So you want to make sure that it is all completely pre-finished before it's going to be fired, because as you know, it looks exactly the same after it's fired, only metal.